Good morning. I'm Pastor Mark. No, not that one. I work with adult discipleship and men's ministry over at the Huntsville campus, as well as life groups here at the Madison campus. And actually, I'm substituting for Pastor Mark today because he has COVID and is in the hospital. So we want to remember to pray for him as we do our devotions today. But I'm stepping in, and we're picking up in Genesis chapter 39. Last week, Joseph had started a wonderful vacation down south in Egypt, courtesy of his loving brothers who sold him into slavery to the traveling band of Ishmaelites. And so today we pick up in chapter 39 of Genesis, where we left off. And Joseph was sold to one of the captains in Pharaoh's guard. His name was Potiphar. And verse 2 tells us that the Lord had favor on Joseph, and because of that he prospered. And Potiphar, as he got to know him, actually put Joseph as the head of his household. He was running everything in the house. If you're a Downton Abbey fan, he would be like Mr. Coss, but not that I watch that show. That's my wife that watches that. But anyway, he was the head of the servants, and with one major difference than Mr. Coss, and that was Joseph was buff. Verse 6 tells us that. It said he was well built and he was handsome, which was awesome except for one thing. Potiphar's wife kind of took a liking to Joseph, and because of that, she pursued him and made her intentions known that she would like to have Joseph for herself. Well, Joseph told her, "Why would I want to do that? Potiphar has made me head of the household. He has withheld nothing from me except for you. And that's because you're his wife. And so I don't want to do that. Matter of fact, that would be sinning against God as well as against my master." So he declined her offer. And as a result, that just encouraged her all the more to pursue him. So she would not back off. Today we would call this sexual harassment. And he tried to avoid her and just steer clear of her. But one day she caught him alone in the house. All the other servants were outside, and she grasped him by the coat and drew her to himself. And Joseph called a timeout. He said, "I need to pray and think about this." No, he didn't call a timeout. He slipped out of his coat and he ran as fast as he could. He escaped from the house, so Potiphar's wife had to go to plan B. She called the other servants into the house. She had screamed and said, "Hey, look, here's his coat. This guy has tried to attack me, and he threw himself on me." And so later on that day, when Potiphar returned home after a long day of work, she told him the same lie. As a result, Joseph got thrown into prison. But not to worry, because our chapter tells us that God was with him. Well, that's great. I'm in prison and God's with me. But because God was with him in prison, guess what happened there? He became head inmate. The warden put him in charge of the prison. When have you ever heard of that? The inmates running the asylum. Well, Joseph was actually running the prison, which is amazing. But have you ever felt like in your life when you do one thing right and then the next thing right, and then all of a sudden bad stuff starts to happen? It's like you can't get out of it. Before you get out of one hole, something else bad happens. Well, the New Testament has a promise for us who are believers in 2 Timothy 3:12, which states that those who desire to live a righteous life will be persecuted. Oh, wait a minute. That's not a great promise. That's not really comforting, but I tell you what, from God's perspective, if you understood his perspective, it is good news. Jesus said, "In this world you'll have many tribulations, but fear not, I've overcome the world." So let's recap what's happened in Joseph's life. Last Friday, he got a nice coat from his dad, and he got a dream from God, and he got enslavement from his brothers. Then today's story, we find he has favor with Potiphar, and he gets put in charge of Potiphar's house, but then he gets thrown into prison because of Potiphar's wife. But then he gets put in charge of the prison. But the story doesn't end there. He continues. So, what can we glean from these few things? First of all, it's not wise to be alone with the opposite sex in the workplace. And just like Joseph, we can't always control these situations, but that's one takeaway. Another is that when you're tempted, isn't the time to start thinking about what you should do. That's why we have our devotions. That's why we read the Bible. We need to think ahead of time, because it's not the time to call a timeout. We don't have time. We need to be like Forrest Gump and run. Forrest, run. The Bible tells us to flee sexual immorality. So you need to think about that ahead of time. The other part is, whatever your job is, do it with all your heart. Joseph, whatever the situation he was in, God put before him, he did it wholeheartedly unto the Lord, and because of that, he prospered. Our part, like Joseph, is to walk with God. God's part, God's promise to us, is that he will make all things work together for his good and our good. When these things happen in your life, do your part. Let God do his part. And remember to pray for Pastor Mark. God bless you.